Have you ever noticed how some people only see your value when it serves them? They don't appreciate your time, effort, or loyalty until they need something. And when that moment comes, they suddenly appear with sweet words, empty promises, and favors disguised as friendship. But here's the truth. Real friendship doesn't come with conditions, and trust isn't a currency to be spent only when it's convenient. There are people who assume you will always say yes, that you will always be available. They count on your kindness, not because they cherish it, but because they can exploit it. And as long as you keep saying yes, they will keep asking. But what happens when you say no? What happens when you stop granting their endless favors? That's when their true intentions are revealed. It's like a well in the middle of a village. Day after day, people come to it, taking water, relying on it, never stopping to appreciate its existence. They assume the water will always be there, endlessly flowing, ready to quench their thirst. But when the well runs dry, only then do they realize what they've lost. Suddenly their gratitude appears, but only because their source of convenience has vanished. Or think of a fire on a cold night. People gather around, warmed by its glow, comforted by its presence. They stretch out their hands, bask in the heat, and expect it to burn forever. But when the fire needs fuel, when it needs care in return, they hesitate. They don't want to tend to it, they just want to take from it. And when the fire fades to embers, when the cold sets in, they walk away in search of another source of warmth. That is the reality of trust. It only holds value when it is mutual. A one-sided relationship where you are constantly giving while the other person only takes is not friendship. It's exploitation. And if you continue to entertain selfish requests, you will find yourself drained, running on empty, with nothing left for yourself. So how do you recognize the difference between a genuine favor and a manipulative request? How do you set boundaries without guilt? Stay until the end, because the last insight will change everything. Let's get started. Number 1, can you lie for me? Let's talk about one of the biggest red flags in any relationship, when someone asks you to lie for them. At first, it may seem harmless. Maybe they ask you to cover for them at work, pretend they were with you when they weren't, or tweak a few details to make them look better. They brush it off with lines like, "It's just a little white lie," or "Come on, it's not a big deal." But here's the uncomfortable truth. Anyone who asks you to compromise your integrity will have no problem doing the same to you when it benefits them. Lying for someone isn't just about protecting them. It's about putting your own reputation, values, and even your future at risk. The moment you agree, you become part of their deception. And here's where it gets dangerous. If they're comfortable asking you to lie for them, they'll have no problem lying to you. To them, honesty is not a principle, but a tool, something that can be bent and twisted to suit their needs. And if today they need you to lie for them, what's stopping them from twisting the truth about you tomorrow? This is where Stoic wisdom becomes invaluable. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus once said, "What is right is not always popular, and what is popular is not always right." The Stoics believed in living with integrity, regardless of how inconvenient or uncomfortable it may be. To them, a virtuous life was one built on unwavering principles, not shifting circumstances. When someone asks you to lie, they are testing your boundaries. If you say yes, they learn that you're willing to bend your morals for their sake. And the more you allow it, the further they'll push. What starts as a small, seemingly insignificant lie can quickly escalate into something far more serious. Let me share a story. A guy I know, let's call him Jake, had a friend who frequently asked for small favors. It started with minor things. "Hey, just tell them I wasn't feeling well." Or, "Can you say I sent that email even though I forgot?" At first, Jake didn't think much of it. After all, they were small lies, nothing that seemed to cause harm. But over time, the requests escalated. His friends started asking for bigger cover-ups, small deceptions turning into major ethical compromises. Then one day, his friend asked him to cover up a serious mistake at work, something that could have gotten others in trouble or even cost someone their job. That was when it hit Jake. This wasn't about helping a friend. This was about being used. And the worst part? When Jake finally refused to lie, his so-called friend turned on him, calling him disloyal and unsupportive. That's when he realized something crucial. People who ask you to lie for them will never truly respect you. They don't value you as a person. They only value what they can get from you. So what do you do when someone asks you to lie for them? 1. Set a firm boundary. The moment someone asks you to lie, shut it down. Immediately. No explanations, no debates. Just a simple, I don't do that. You don't need to justify your integrity to anyone. 2. Pay attention to their reaction. If they respect your decision, it means they may have just been careless and will think twice before asking again. But if they pressure, guilt trip, or manipulate you into compliance, that's a clear sign they don't respect you. They only care about what they can gain from you. 3. Recognize that losing someone who relies on deception isn't a loss, it's a blessing. You don't need people in your life who expect you to sacrifice your principles for their convenience. True friends will never put you in a position where you have to choose between your integrity and their approval. At the end of the day, honest people don't ask you to lie for them. If someone is comfortable dragging you into their dishonesty, you can be sure they wouldn't hesitate to do the same to you. Protect your integrity, because once it's compromised, it's hard to get back. Number 2, can you lend me money with no intention to repay? Let's talk about one of the biggest red flags in human relationships. Someone who borrows money with no intention of repaying it. At first, it might seem harmless. They give you a convincing story, telling you they're just in a tough spot and need a little help. They promise to pay you back soon, maybe even throw in a reassuring, "You know I got you next time," or "I would do the same for you." But here's the problem. It's not about the money, it's about their character. Borrowing without a sense of responsibility shows entitlement. It means they see your generosity as something they deserve rather than something they should respect. And if they can easily take from you without feeling the burden of accountability, what else are they willing to take? Because the truth is, when someone borrows with no guilt about never paying it back, they're revealing something much deeper. They don't value fairness, and they don't value you. At its core, this isn't about finances. It's about respect, integrity, and how they view relationships. Money has a strange way of revealing people's true nature. It exposes whether someone sees you as a person or as a resource. This is where Stoic wisdom comes in. Seneca once said, "A loan creates an enemy." Why? Because when money enters a relationship, it changes the dynamic. Suddenly, the person who borrowed feels guilt or resentment. Instead of appreciating your help, they start avoiding you. They justify not paying you back by saying things like, "Oh, you have plenty of money. Why are you so worried?" Or, "You know I'll pay you eventually. Stop bringing it up." But the reality is, the moment they borrowed with no intention of repaying, they already disrespected you. Let me share a story. A guy I know, let's call him David, had a close friend who frequently asked to borrow small amounts of money. At first, it was just $20 here, $50 there. Nothing too concerning. David didn't mind helping out, but over time, he started noticing a pattern. The friend never offered to repay, and whenever David brought it up, the response was always the same. "Oh yeah, I'll take care of that soon." But soon never came. Then one day, the friend asked for a much larger amount, something that would actually hurt David financially if it were never repaid. That's when he finally said no. And guess what? The friendship ended almost immediately. The moment David stopped being a source of easy money, the so-called friend disappeared. That's when he realized it was never about friendship. It was about what they could get. So how do you handle this? First, never lend what you're not willing to lose. If you give money, consider it a gift, not a loan, because the reality is most personal loans never come back. If you expect repayment and don't get it, you'll feel resentment. But if you give it freely, you maintain control over your emotions and expectations. Second, watch how people treat debts. A responsible person will pay you back without being asked. Someone who avoids it was never going to repay in the first place. If they suddenly stop answering messages or act defensive when the topic comes up, they never plan to honor their word. And finally, understand that saying no will reveal their true intentions. If someone values you only when you're financially useful to them, then their loyalty was never real. True friends respect your boundaries, whether financial or otherwise. If denying a loan makes someone turn on you, they were never really there for you to begin with. At the end of the day, it's not about the money, it's about respect. A person who borrows without the intention to repay isn't just careless with cash. they're careless with trust. And if they don't respect a debt, they won't respect you either. Money may be replaceable, but trust isn't. Protect yours. If you found this valuable, hit like and subscribe for more powerful insights. Number 3, can you keep this a secret? Let's talk about one of the most dangerous favors people ask for without realizing the weight of it. Keeping a secret to cover their wrongdoing. At first, it might seem harmless. Maybe they made a mistake at work and want you to stay quiet. Maybe they did something unethical and need you to look the other way. They say things like, "Come on, you're my friend. Just keep this between us." It feels like a small ask, a minor act of loyalty. But here's the truth. Keeping secrets that protect dishonesty doesn't make you a good friend. It makes you part of the deception. When someone asks you to cover for them, they're not just asking for silence, they're asking for your integrity. And once you agree, you're involved. If their lie unravels, you go down with them. Even if it never comes to light, you carry the burden of knowing the truth and doing nothing. The worst part? People who drag you into their secrets rarely take responsibility when things fall apart. If they're willing to deceive others, what makes you think they wouldn't throw you under the bus to save themselves? It happens all the time. Someone asks for a simple cover-up, and when the situation spirals out of control, they point fingers at the person who helped them. Suddenly, you're the one left dealing with the consequences of a mistake that was never yours to begin with. This is where Stoic wisdom comes in. Marcus Aurelius once said, "Silence becomes cowardice when occasion demands speaking the whole truth." That means staying quiet in situations where the truth is necessary isn't just harmless, it's a form of betrayal. The Stoics believe that truth and integrity are the foundation of a strong character. If you allow someone to pull you into their deception, you're compromising your own values for the sake of their mistakes. And once you do it once, they'll keep asking, pushing you deeper into their web of dishonesty. Let me share a story. A woman I know, let's call her Sarah, had a co-worker who asked for a small favor. He had been slacking off on a project and wanted Sarah to tell their manager that he had been working late when he hadn't. He assured her it was just this once. She hesitated, but not wanting to cause conflict, she agreed. It seemed harmless at the time, but a few weeks later, he asked again, this time to cover for a bigger issue. Before she knew it, Sarah was constantly being dragged into his lies. She felt uneasy, but she told herself she was just being a good friend. Then one day, their manager discovered the truth. And guess who got blamed too? Sarah. That's when she learned an important lesson. Protecting someone else's deception never ends well. She thought she was helping, but all she did was put herself at risk. So how do you handle this? First, set a firm boundary. If someone asks you to keep a secret that goes against your integrity, shut it down immediately. A simple, "I don't get involved in things like that," is enough. You don't owe them an explanation or a debate. Second, observe their reaction. A good person will respect your stance. Someone manipulative will pressure you, guilt trip you, or act offended. That's a red flag. And finally, understand that real trust is built on truth. If someone only values you when you help them hide things, they don't respect you. They just see you as useful. That's not friendship, and it's not loyalty. At the end of the day, never let someone else's dishonesty compromise your integrity, because once you protect a lie, you become part of it. And nothing destroys trust faster than deception. The moment you agree to cover for someone, you give them permission to keep using you. The only way to truly protect yourself is to stand firm in your values, no matter how small the secret seems. A person who truly respects you will never ask you to lie for them. And if they do, that tells you everything you need to know. Number 4, can you take the blame for me? Let's talk about one of the biggest red flags in human relationships, someone who asks you to take the blame for their mistakes. At first, it might seem minor. Maybe they forgot to do something at work and ask you to cover for them. Maybe they made a social misstep and want you to take the fall. They'll say things like, "Come on, it's just this one time," or "I'd do it for you." But here's the reality. People who avoid accountability will betray you the moment it benefits them. The second you agree to take the blame, you set a dangerous precedent. You become their safety net, and the more they get away with it, the more they'll rely on you to clean up their mess. The worst part? If things spiral out of control, they won't protect you. They'll let you sink while they walk away untouched. They might act grateful at first, but when the time comes to face real consequences, they'll disappear. And if you ever try to call them out, they'll either downplay what they did or turn it around on you, saying things like, "You agreed to it," or "Why are you making a big deal out of this?" That's the mindset of someone who refuses to take responsibility. Instead of learning from their mistakes, they shift the burden onto others, making excuses and finding ways to escape accountability. This is where Stoic wisdom comes in. Seneca once said, "A dishonest man always blames circumstances, never himself." And that's exactly the kind of person who will ask you to take the blame. They refuse to own their actions. They tell themselves that their situation, their bad luck, or even other people are at fault, but never them. If they're comfortable blaming you once, what's stopping them from doing it again? Let me share a story. A guy I know, let's call him Alex, had a coworker who was always finding ways to avoid trouble. One day, this coworker made a major mistake on a project. Instead of owning up to it, he asked Alex to say it was a simple miscommunication between them. Alex, being a good-natured person, agreed, thinking it was harmless. But then it happened again and again. Every time something went wrong, this coworker found a way to shift the blame onto Alex. It started with small things, but eventually it escalated to serious issues. And when their boss finally had enough and wanted to hold someone accountable, it wasn't the coworker who faced the consequences, it was Alex. That's when he realized something important. People who refuse to take responsibility will always find someone else to carry the burden for them. So how do you handle this? First, say no immediately. The moment someone asks you to take the blame, set a firm boundary. A simple, "I'm not responsible for your mistakes," is all it takes. You don't owe them an explanation, and you don't need to argue. Second, pay attention to their reaction. If they get defensive, angry, or try to guilt trip you, that's a clear sign they never respected you in the first place. They only valued what you could do for them. And finally, distance yourself from people who avoid accountability. Someone who won't own their mistakes is someone who will sacrifice you to protect themselves. They might act like a friend, a teammate, or even a loved one. But when push comes to shove, they'll always choose themselves at your expense. At the end of the day, true strength comes from taking responsibility, not running from it. Never carry the weight of someone else's dishonesty, because once you do it for them, they'll expect you to do it forever. And the longer you allow it, the harder it becomes to break free. Protect your integrity, because the moment you take the blame for someone else, you give them permission to keep using you. Number 5, can you do this for free? Let's talk about a favor that might seem harmless at first. Someone asking you to do things for free repeatedly, without appreciation. It starts small. Maybe they ask for a little help, a quick favor, or just a simple task. At first you don't mind, you're happy to help. But then it happens again and again. And before you know it, you've become their go-to person for free work. Not because they value you, but because they've realized they can get something from you without giving anything in return. There's a big difference between helping someone and being taken advantage of. If someone truly values you, they will respect your time, effort, and expertise. They won't just take, they'll give back, whether through gratitude, fair exchange, or at the very least acknowledgement. But people who constantly expect you to work for free don't see your effort as something to be appreciated. They see it as something they're entitled to. The problem isn't just that they ask, it's that they assume you should say yes over and over again without ever considering what you need in return. This is where Stoic wisdom comes in. Marcus Aurelius once said, "Do not waste yourself in rejection. Do not throw away your days in useless resentment." What does this mean? It means your energy, time, and talents are valuable, and wasting them on people who don't appreciate them will only lead to frustration. When you keep saying yes to free work for someone who doesn't respect your efforts, you're not being kind. You're allowing yourself to be drained. The more you give without limits, the more they will expect. Let me share a story. A woman I know, let's call her Emily, was a talented graphic designer. A friend asked her for a small logo design, and she happily agreed to do it for free as a favor. Then that same friend asked for another design, and another. Every time it was just one more thing, and every time Emily felt too guilty to say no. But when she finally hinted at charging for her work, the response was, "Wow, I thought we were friends." That's when she realized something important. Real friends respect your skills. Users only respect what they can get from you. So how do you handle this? First, set boundaries. If someone repeatedly asks for free work, kindly but firmly let them know that your time has value. You don't have to be rude or defensive, just clear. A simple, "I'd love to help, but this is what I do for a living" can be enough. Second, watch their reaction. A good person will respect your limits, even if they can't afford to pay you. They'll understand that your work is valuable. But someone who gets upset or tries to guilt trip you was never truly valuing you in the first place. And finally, remember that generosity should be a choice, not an obligation. Helping people is good, but only when it's mutual and appreciated. If someone only comes to you when they need free work, they don't see you as a friend or a professional. They see you as a resource. And that's not someone you should keep around. At the end of the day, your skills, time, and energy are valuable. It's okay to help people, but it's also okay to expect respect and fair treatment in return. If someone only values you when they need free work, they never truly valued you at all. Number 6, can you cover for me? Let's talk about one of the most common ways people take advantage of others, asking you to cover for them. It happens everywhere, at work, in friendships, in relationships. Maybe they forgot to finish an important task and want you to take the fall. Maybe they neglected their responsibilities and expect you to clean up the mess. Or maybe they simply don't want to deal with something, so they push it onto you instead. At first, it might seem like a small favor, just helping out someone who needs it. But over time, you start to realize something. It's not about occasional help. It's about them avoiding responsibility and you being the one who pays the price for it. The truth is, trust is built on responsibility. If someone constantly asks you to cover for them, it means they lack the discipline to handle their own duties. And the more you say yes, the more they'll expect it. What starts as a one-time favor quickly becomes a pattern. They don't see it as you helping them out. They see it as you always being available to fix their problems. And the worst part, if something goes wrong, they won't take the blame. You will. This is where Stoic wisdom comes in. Epictetus once said, "The more we value things outside our control, the less control we have." What does this mean in this situation? It means that you can't control how irresponsible someone else is, but you can control whether or not you allow it to affect you. The more you keep fixing someone else's mistakes, the less control you have over your own time, energy, and peace of mind. Every time you agree to cover for them, you're sacrificing a part of yourself, your reputation, your time, your well-being. And in the end, when things fall apart, they won't be the one who suffers. You will. Let me share a story. A guy I know, let's call him Adam, had a co-worker who always asked for favors. At first, it was small things. "Hey, can you clock me in? I'm running late." Then it became bigger. "Can you finish this report for me? I got busy." Every time Adam helped, thinking he was being a good teammate. But then one day, a major mistake happened on one of the reports. And guess who got blamed? Adam. The co-worker was quick to shift responsibility, saying, "Well, Adam handled that part, not me." That's when Adam realized something important. Covering for someone else's irresponsibility only puts you at risk. So how do you handle this? First, set boundaries. If someone asks you to cover for them, say, "I can't do that." No explanations needed. You don't owe them a reason, and you don't need to feel guilty for protecting yourself. Second, watch their reaction. A responsible person will respect your decision. Someone who gets upset? That's a red flag. It means they were never asking for help. They were expecting you to carry their burden. And finally, remember this. Reliability is a strength, but only when it's not being exploited. At the end of the day, responsibility is not something you can transfer. If someone refuses to handle their own duties, they don't deserve your trust. Cover for yourself, not for people who refuse to do their part. Number 7, can you risk everything while they risk nothing? Let's talk about one of the most dangerous kinds of people, those who expect you to take all the risks while they play it safe. These are the people who will push you to make huge sacrifices, your time, your money, your reputation, or even your well-being, while they sit comfortably on the sidelines. They'll encourage you with words like, "Trust me, this will be worth it," or "Come on, take one for the team." But when things go wrong, you're the one left dealing with the consequences alone, while they act as if they had nothing to do with it. Here's the truth. If someone asks you to take all the risks while they stay safe, they don't see you as a partner. They see you as a tool. Real friends, real partners, and real allies don't ask you to gamble everything while they contribute nothing. If they truly believed in the risk, they'd take it with you. But instead, they want the reward without the responsibility. They want you to jump into the fire while they watch from a safe distance, and the moment things fall apart, they'll disappear, leaving you to clean up the mess. This is where Stoic wisdom comes in. Seneca once said, "The willing are led by fate, the reluctant are dragged by it." What does this mean in this context? It means that if you allow others to manipulate you into taking all the risks while they sit back, you're not in control of your life. They are. You're being dragged into their plans, their schemes, and their convenience while they stay comfortable. They don't care about the price you pay. And the worst part? People like this never step up when it's their turn to sacrifice. They always have an excuse, always a reason why they can't contribute. But they have no problem watching you struggle. Let me share a story. A guy I know, let's call him Ryan, had a friend who always had big ideas. Business ideas, investment opportunities, risky moves. Every time he'd tell Ryan, "This is the next big thing. You should put in the money first, and once it takes off, I'll join in." Ryan trusted him, so he took the risk, investing time, money, and energy. But his friend, he never followed through. And when things didn't work out, he simply shrugged and said, "Well, you didn't have to do it." That's when Ryan realized something. This so-called friend never intended to take a risk. He only wanted someone else to carry the weight. So how do you handle people like this? First, ask yourself, are they taking the same risk? If the answer is no, that's a red flag. A real partner, whether in business, friendship, or life, will stand beside you, not hide behind you. Second, set boundaries. If someone keeps pushing you to sacrifice while they contribute nothing, say, "I'm only in if we both take the risk." If they back away at that moment, you have your answer. They were never truly invested in the first place. And finally, trust actions, not words. If they truly believed in what they're asking you to do, they wouldn't hesitate to take the leap with you. At the end of the day, real trust is built on shared effort and responsibility. If someone expects you to risk everything while they risk nothing, they're not looking out for you. They're using you. Know your worth, protect your future, and never carry risks that others refuse to share.